Good morning and welcome back to the Duval 22 podcast. My name is Gus Logue. Today I'm very thrilled to be joined by Demetrius Harvey of the Florida Times Union. Deme is a recurring guest now. It's his second time back on the Duval 22 pod. Deme, thanks so much for joining me today. How have you been? How have you been?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great honor, obviously, to be on this podcast. I enjoy it a lot. I enjoy you guys. But no, seriously, it's been great. It's been a crazy season, right? Everybody's sort of surprised and excited and everything. And yeah, no, it's been good over on this end.
Yeah, as I was talking to you and as I've talked about with Shipley, even like on the podcast, it's always a
Mhm.
lot better for us when the Jaguars are winning, obviously, because then like people are paying attention. It's a very weird season right now because usually at this time, fans and media alike are kind of looking ahead to the draft, looking at mock drafts. Who's going to be in the top five? What are the team's position of needs? But not this year, not in the Liam Cohen era, because the Jaguars have won four straight games, including Sunday's 36 to 19 win. Deem, I
Yep.
can never remember final scores. Is that just a me thing? But like,
N
I always
no,
have to look it up three times afterwards.
dude, even during the game itself, like I'll be writing and they'll take the final score off the scoreboard, and I'm like, wait, what was the score
Yeah,
again?
yeah.
I just I always have to look it up. It's one of those things where you just know the win or the loss and like kind of how bad it was. You don't really care about the final score
Yeah,
too
well, it
much.
was a big win for the Jaguars for sure.
Mm.
I don't feel like we don't even have to talk about the specific win a ton because obviously Daniel Jones went out at the very end of the first quarter. I think everyone inside and outside of Jacksonville agrees that the Jaguars likely would have won the game even if Daniel Jones was fully healthy, just because it was kind of that kind of day for the Jaguars. But still, certainly an encouraging win. Both teams were 8-4 going into the game, so now the Jaguars have sole possession of first place in the AFC South. They are currently the number three seed in the playoffs, and playoff simulators by ESPN and Next Gen Stats have the Jaguars at 98% chance to make the playoffs. And so maybe the
Mm.
Colts or the Texans are like, will jump ahead of them and win the division. Obviously, the number one goal for every team is to win the division first. But it's looking good for the Jaguars because the AFC field is just so weak this season. Um, yeah, so it seems like they're in. Demetrius, I honestly don't really have any specific things from this game, but I just figure we should at least touch on it. I don't know if you have any
Mhm.
like major takeaways from what we saw on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I mean you pretty much laid it out. When Daniel Jones goes down, you it's pretty much a wrap. I mean,
Yeah.
Riley Leonard, he's a good for him for making it to the NFL, but he's just not ready for that spotlight. He just isn't.
No.
He's more of like a running back at this point, and that's not an offense to him. It's just that he's a rookie. He's a guy who just is coming in trying to learn the position more and more. I know he played it, but it's one of those things where the NFL just is way too fast. So I agree. I think the Jags would have probably won the game if Daniel Jones was still in it, regardless, just because it was one of those days. It seemed like Jonathan Taylor couldn't run, and I kind of predicted that that would happen before the game. And then it felt like the Colts weren't able to get going, whereas the Jags started off kind of fast just because of the Devin Lloyd interception. They got back to their turnover ways. I do think that the one big takeaway from this game is just that you can see how it can all come together. That was one of the first games I felt like all three phases, and I know the special teams didn't really play too much of a factor, but it did. They had the fumble, like all three phases sort of worked in congruence, but really, like it wasn't just that the offense was just okay and then the defense was good, but it was also the offense was really good, the defense was really good, and then the special teams was great. So it's one of those situations where you can finally see exactly what this Jaguars team is supposed to look like under Liam Cohen. I think that that's encouraging moving forward. And yeah, I mean 98% chance to make the playoffs. I've been here before. I think everybody's been here before in 2023. They had like something like a 98% chance to make the playoffs
Did
and
they really?
some
Was
percent
it that
chance.
high?
It was pretty high. It was pretty high. It was around this exact same time. I think they had lost to the Bengals last week, last year or 2 years ago, and that's when the slide happened. So I'm not saying it's going to happen this year, but I'm always prepared now mentally.
Absolutely, that's fair. Well, part of the reason for the slide in 2023 was that Trevor Lawrence
Hmm.
eventually landed on season-ending injured reserve, but that's definitely one of the biggest switches this season. I mean, it is his third winning season in 5 years.
Yeah.
It should be his second playoff run in 5 years, and obviously, it's like we can all almost like chalk it up to 4 years because of the Urban Meyer of it all. Like, I feel like again, people inside and outside of Jacksonville just kind of like throw that year away. But
Mm-hmm.
Trevor, again, like this year has been on a tear, especially the past 4 weeks. Since Liam Cohen told him to quote unquote cut it loose and let it rip after the team's Week 10 collapse in Houston, the team has won 4 straight games, and Lawrence ranks third in total touchdowns and third in big time throw rate among all quarterbacks in that span. And so he's chucking that thing. Like you saw it on Sunday. It was like maybe I don't think it was the best game of his career, mostly just because
Yeah.
like the stakes weren't that high. Like the Ravens
Mm.
game in 2022 comes to top of mind for me, but it was
Yes.
like arguably the most efficient game of his career, especially when you consider like a couple of drops and like the conditions because it was raining and I wasn't at the stadium for this game, but I think that if you were watching on the broadcast, like correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed
Hmm.
like the rain was a lot worse than it appeared to be on the broadcast. Like my dad texted me and he's like,
Yeah.
"Did my dad texted me? He said, did Trevor Lawrence dye his hair? Because like it looks darker." I'm
Oh
like, "No, man,
man.
it was raining, even if it didn't seem."
It it didn't really look like it wasn't like it was a torrential downpour, but it was a constant rain, and it picked up and it dropped off, throughout the contest. So I can see on the broadcast, like it probably you can't really see it
It
unless
didn't
it's
seem bad
torrential
at all.
downpour. Yeah. So I mean, like, it probably wasn't as bad as like everyone maybe thought at like initially, just because of how much rain they were thinking that was going to come.
True.
But it was still a wet game. That's why there was a couple drops. Jacoby Myers had the one drop. That's super uncharacteristic of him. Obviously, he entered the game with 18 catches on 21 targets. So I mean, the guy just doesn't drop passes. So like it did have an impact, but to your point, it wasn't like super crazy or anything.
Yeah, Lawrence really had like he had the one like kind of intermediate to deep shot to
Yeah,
Myers on the right sideline where like it was a little high for Myers and Myers caught it, but it was like so high that he couldn't get his feet in bounds. Like I
yeah.
feel like that was pretty much the only that wasn't even a negative play. It was just not a positive play for Lawrence, but he was
Hmm.
dialed in. One of my favorite stats from the game is that according to Next Gen Stats, when Lawrence was throwing on the move, so when he was throwing when moving at least 8 miles per hour, according to their
Hmm.
player tracking data. He was 5 for 6, 49 yards and a touchdown. That's a 140.3 passer rating. And like
Hmm.
that's just stats, but like if you go back and look at like the touchdown to Tim Patrick, the bootleg left rollout against the blitz to Tim Patrick,
Yes.
a couple of other throws, like he was just in the zone. And so like I've been waiting for this all season for multiple seasons for him to like be in a rhythm, and it feels like we're finally seeing it. And obviously Jacoby Myers has a big uh, is a big factor in that. The return of Brenton Strange and Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah.
I feel like especially Jacoby Myers really, but Lawrence has been awesome. But also Josh Hines-Allen has been awesome since the
Hmm.
Jaguars' Week 8 bye. He leads the entire NFL in pressures, and he has 4 sacks. He has 1 sack in each of his last 4 games actually, which is the third longest streak in franchise history. But his 4 sacks since Week 8 are second only to Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons, who each have 5. So
Hmm.
like basically like my takeaway from like kind of not just Sunday's game, but from this past month, the Jaguars' 4 game winning streak is that like obviously a lot of different things have come together. You can credit a bunch of different players, a lot of different guys on the coaching staff. Obviously Liam Cohen and
Hmm.
defensive coordinator Anthony Campanile, who I think is going to be a 2026 head coach,
Hmm.
2027 head coach actually. I don't think he's going to get hired next cycle because he's only been 1 year, but the guy's head coach material for sure. But
Yep.
long story short, my point is like I think that this 4 game winning streak has like if you can point to anything, like I'm pointing to just Trevor Lawrence and Josh Hines-Allen, easily like the best player on each side of the ball, kind of like the two faces of the franchise, just really maximizing their skill set or just being maximized in the scheme, whatever you want to call it. So Demetrius,
Hmm.
Josh Hines-Allen and Trevor Lawrence are both doing amazing right now. And it's
Hmm.
also after early stretches in the season where each of them were like not really doing so great. There was a lot of just uh, people wanting more, both inside and outside of Duval County.
Sure.
So my question to you, that was a long ramble, so sorry for that. But my question to you is like which player are you more impressed by? I think it's pretty easy to say that like Lawrence's kind of like midseason revival has been more impactful just because of the position that he plays. But were either of them like, were you expecting both of them to happen? Were one of them like a little bit less expected from you? Just what are your thoughts on both of their trajectories right now?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like, especially for a guy like Josh throughout the season, even before the 4 sacks. over the last month. It was more of a fact of he just was needing to finish. Obviously he's been near the top of the list in terms of pressures. I know we all talk about pressures and kind of laugh at him, but they do make a difference. And there's a reason why Eric Armstead was able to get 5.5 sacks, by the time that he did. There's a reason why, other players, BJ Green, Danny Strigow, have improved immensely or have looked good. They don't do that necessarily if Josh Hines-Allen isn't on the field, and that's not to say that Josh is the top pass rusher in the NFL or anything crazy or he's this giant of a player, because I do think that he can be better, and I think he knows that as long as he just goes out and does what he knows to do, he can prove that. And so the biggest takeaway from me, I think, for Josh specifically, is that it was really encouraging from my perspective to see how he kind of handled himself during everybody was kind of putting pressure on him for the streak or for the career sack record. And I
Right.
get it. He came into the season needing like 3 sacks or something and couldn't get there. It just felt like it took a long, long, long time. He finally gets it. It happens at home, which is probably ideal against the Chargers in that great game that they had against that team. So, and then eventually it seemed like after that, after he got there, now it's just about him getting there more consistently, and he's sort of done that. I think the pressure's sort of off. I don't necessarily think that he was feeling like, oh, I can't do it. It was more just, just it didn't happen because of X, Y, and Z reasons. It's not like he never had the talent, I guess is the easiest way to say it. And
Mhm.
then as far as Trevor's concerned, I'm like one. I feel like I'm like one of the last bastions of the Trevor Lawrence club, I guess,
Yeah.
if you want to call it that, because I've always thought that this guy could play. I mean, he's made all the like I've watched every snap of his career. Like the guy is not. I've seen bust. I've covered quarterbacks who aren't good. I mean, I've looked around the league plenty. I think everybody has, and I'm not saying I'm particular on this, but like it just seems like, how can you call this kid a bust just because, maybe he doesn't have his best game. Like, obviously that game against the Rams was terrible for everybody. The game I think that everybody points to is the Seahawks game, where it just didn't look like it clicked at all. But that's not necessarily something that you would take and say this is the entire career of this guy. There are circumstances around him that dictate some things. I mean, Jacoby Myers comes in, and all of a sudden Trevor Lawrence is playing better. I don't think that that's a coincidence. I think that they needed a sure-handed, reliable target, and Jacoby Myers has absolutely shown that. And not just because he can catch, but where he is on the field. Like if you guys look, you'll see Jacoby it's not like he's making contested catches every time. He's finding these soft zones and sitting, and Trevor knows exactly where he's going to sit. He throws it right there. I can think of an example just a couple years ago, not to pick on him, but in the game that the Jaguars were playing the Bengals and they lost, Parker Washington is in the wrong spot. And, Trevor has to move, and then he gets sacked, he gets hurt. And I'm not saying it's his fault, but I'm just bringing up that point that that's the difference between catastrophe and just a normal play where you guys probably don't even think about it like for longer than a couple more plays. So
Yeah.
that's sort of the guy that I'm used to seeing, and I do think that obviously he's getting better and better. The deep ball stuff, obviously getting Brian Thomas Jr. back, that was always going to be the case. Whenever he came back, he was going to play that perimeter guy, sort of get downfield, make the catch kind of player. That's what he was last year. That's what he was good at. And so they were able to do it. So yeah, I just think that Trevor's trajectory has been about what I expected, and Liam Cohen has been able to capitalize on having the particular pieces that they needed.
I love the point you made about Myers running the right routes because, like,
Mhm.
obviously him catching the ball is a big deal, and like
Sure.
the Jaguars' drop rate, like going down in general, obviously helps. But like that wasn't the only problem. Like that was kind of like the easiest thing to point to and to say that there was a problem. But like I remember watching like week 4 film against the Niners, and Liam Cohen designed a bunch of choice routes for both Parker Washington and Travis Hunter. And like I don't want to drag Parker Washington too much. Like you
Sure.
said, he's having a great year. Like same for Travis Hunter, he'll be great too. But like
Mhm.
neither of them were running the right routes anytime. And it was an option route. It was like, okay, if the defender is like inside leverage, you break out and vice versa. And like I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. And so Trevor had a few throws where it's like he had to kind of double clutch or he had to like throw it away or like it's not just on those choice routes in week 4 against the Niners. Like that's just one example of like just him not having a lot of trust in his receivers, not just to finish the plays when the ball is hitting their fingers, but also just to like actually start the play and get open. And so now players are getting open, like Jacoby Myers being in like the slot role for Cohen's offense just makes like Tim Patrick fit in perfectly as a wide receiver 3. Lawrence had a perfect passer rating when targeting Tim Patrick on Sunday, which is pretty wild. Obviously, Brian Thomas can be in more of a vertical role. Brendan Strange is kind of like your do everything guy in the run game, and then he can be like a good third or fourth option in the passing game. And so it's just like all really coming together, even with the running game not really doing that well. Like I know Travis
Yeah.
Etienne had the touchdown against the Colts, and he was like generally pretty good. But especially the past 2 weeks, the Jaguars' running offense had been like horrific. Like it had been like their two
Hmm.
worst rushing success rates of the season by far. And so like
Hmm.
Lawrence has like been putting the team on his back, or at least putting the offense on his back. And so certainly very, very encouraging stuff. That's the first big picture thing I wanted to talk about was just the impact of the kind of face of the franchise on both sides of the ball. But Demetrius, the next thing I want to
Hmm.
talk about is actually about Jacksonville's most recent opponent because we already mentioned that Daniel Jones went down from injury. And I just have a take to get off of my chest, and I want to see how you react to it. And so my
Hmm.
take is that the even with hindsight, the Colts should not regret trading for Sauce Gardner. So
Hmm.
when the trade happened, like me and you and a lot of other people were like, what the heck are the Colts doing? Like Sauce Gardner is a good player, but like why are you giving up 2 first round picks when like quarterback isn't really a sure thing for you? Like Daniel Jones is on
Hmm.
a super hot start to the season, but it was against like they played the Broncos and that was like really the only decent opponent. Like I feel like everyone else was at or below 500. And so it
Hmm.
was like, all right, you got like a pretty small sample size here, Colts. Like, do you really think you're gonna like are you really pushing all your chips into the middle of the table? Like, you really think you're going for a championship here? But at the time, like, as much as like the whole quarterback situation was gnarly, and it's like, why are you giving away the first round picks? Because you'll probably end up needing those to get a quarterback after Daniel Jones eventually burns out. And that kind of happened quicker than usual. But the reason that I'm for the trade, both now and when it happened, is because like it's the Colts. Like they've been stuck in mediocrity for so long that like I think if I were a Colts fan, like I would have a lot of respect, or maybe not a lot of respect, but I would just really appreciate Chris Ballard for like finally doing something that moved the
Hmm.
team over the top. And now, honestly, like it really like the injury sucks big time for Daniel Jones. I really feel for him, but arguably it sets up the Colts better because they're kind of like a quarterback away. They'll probably end up like re-signing Daniel Jones. Like we'll see if Anthony Richardson or Riley Leonard can like do anything and like be exciting until Jones comes back uh sometime in the middle of the 2026 season. But like I for me, I come back to the Jaguars' trade up of Travis Hunter. And a lot of
Yeah.
people with hindsight are saying, why did you do that? Like your team is already really good. So like why did you give up 2 first round picks for this like skinny kid who is out for the season right now and like was like not bad, but like not really making all of like the highlight plays that we expected. But like the
Hmm.
reason again that I like the Jaguars is trade up for Travis Hunter both now and when it happened is because it's the Jaguars. Like they were never they like both the Jaguars and the Colts are just like stuck in like either mediocrity or worse than that, and they just don't have
Yeah.
a lot of star power on the team. And so for these general managers to be like, okay, like I see a window, I see this room for opportunity to add star power to my team, and it could have some amazing results. And it's a big swing. Right now, it looks like arguably 2 misses, especially for the Colts. I guess you shouldn't say it's a miss because like Sauce Gardner has only been there for a month, and if Sauce Gardner ends up making like 3 Pro Bowls in a row, then like it's probably
Sure.
be worth it regardless of how the Colts quarterback situation works out or just
Hmm.
how the Colts like do in the playoffs for the next couple of years. But yeah, that's my take is that like I just respect these teams that like don't have a lot of star power to like actually go and get the guys because like if not, you're just kind of like sitting on your hands and like you're just gonna let another 8 and 9 season go by. And so at
Yeah.
this point, it's maybe it is a swing and a miss for the Colts, but I have a lot of respect for the swing. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I can be persuaded and swayed on my opinion on this. I think that I think that what you said does make sense, and that I mean, hey, you're a team like the Colts. I know because I know a couple of Colts writers pretty closely, and they've been saying for years about how, hey, Chris Bauer's just not going to get anybody in free agency. They're not trading for anybody. They're not, and they'll ask him every single year. They'll ask him, hey, you going to work on acquiring guys in free agency? He's like, yeah, we're going to continue doing what we need to do to upgrade the team, and then they don't do anything. So this year for them to go out and they have made a couple big trades, for the cornerback position specifically, because that's been something that's been their Achilles heel for years. And so I do understand, like, the idea is, hey, we're trading 2 first-round picks and AD Mitchell, don't forget about him, for Sauce Gardner, and and one of the picks basically is taking Sauce Gardner, if you think of it like that. And then one of the picks is just, you're giving the first round pick to the Jets. And so, I will also say that part of the reason why maybe it's not as catastrophic as it maybe appeared, at first glance, because you're just putting all your chips into the Daniel Jones basket. I do think that it's a situation where the next year's draft, I know, is not that great, in the quarterback positions. I have, like, there's not really necessarily that guy, and it's not like the Colts were going to be that bad to where they're going to be able to get that guy. When they made the trade, I think they were 8-1, right? So,
Mhm.
obviously they were sitting there thinking, okay, we're not going to be in position to get a quarterback anyway. So, I mean, that doesn't matter this year. And then they're in their minds, they're probably hoping, hey, next year we're going to be even better. We'll be able to get a quarterback if we need to, later, or just wait until the 2028 draft. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. I think for both teams, I think you're right. To me, like when the Jaguars made that trade, for Travis Hunter, I was like, yeah, do it. Like, why not? Like,
Why not?
what's the worst thing that can happen, right? Like, say
Mhm.
you stay there. Everyone thought they would take they would have taken Ashton Genty. So, hey, say you stay there, you take Ashton Genty, and probably trade Travis Etienne. Like, what does that get you? Really moving forward. Ashton Genty's a great running back, but how has that helped the Raiders this year? And so I do think that swinging for a big of a hit as you can get with Travis Hunter, the top player in the draft class, in my opinion, just an absolute beast of an athlete, just an incredible athlete, probably the most athletic player that'll ever be in Jacksonville. And I mean that because he can just keep going. I mean, endurance is huge for athleticism. So it's going to be interesting to see. I do think you're right. I think that the Colts in the end are probably going to end up it's going to end up working out. People are going to forget about it in a couple of years, especially if Sauce Gardner can get back to that all pro level. I think one of the biggest trepidations was that Sauce had just not necessarily fallen off a cliff, but it was like, you had this amazing year and then just kind of like just okay, like good years, nothing crazy. So we'll see what happens. But I do think that both teams, I agree, like it's just you might as well.
Might as well. Why not? Like
Yep.
otherwise, you're just kind of sitting on your hands and gonna accept either a losing season or just not a Super Bowl season. So
Right.
the whole point is to have a parade. Like, so do things that'll get you a parade float.
Yep.
Let's move on though to wrap up. I like So let me ask you this, team. The
hmm
Jaguars this weekend, they host the 3-10 New York Jets. The Jaguars, I haven't checked actually recently if the line has stuck, but they opened as 11.5 point favorites. The last time the Jaguars were favorited that heavily in a regular season game was week 16 of 2007. So it's been nearly 2 decades since the Jaguars were expected to win by as much as they're expected to win this Sunday. We already talked about how they have a 98% chance to make the playoffs. And so, like, vibes are so high in Duval County right now. And I don't want to, like, be anti vibes, but just to, like, provide, I don't know, a different angle. Like,
hmm
what do you think is going to be the Achilles heel of this team? Like, what do you think, whether
hmm
it's like, oh, the team, like the game this Sunday is like a lot closer than we expect, or the Jaguars get bounced in the playoffs earlier than we expect? Like, what do you think the reason would be? Like, look in your little crystal ball and tell me.
Yeah, I guess what would cause a fall? Do you mean like a fall, like from where they are now? Like,
Just
they're
like
gonna miss the playoffs if
what's like
this
the
happened?
weak point of their team, basically. Like if they lose,
Mm.
what's the path towards them
Oh,
winning
why?
something? Yeah.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, I do think the consistency thing is just it's not been there necessarily. You know, even in the Cardinals game, I mean, you had to go into overtime with the Cardinals, which is not good. I mean, the Cardinals are not a good team, and so it's more of like a will they live up to what they should be at, or will they, sort of go down? I mean, the Raiders game again, overtime. You shouldn't have that, and then you destroy the Chargers. It's weird, you have a 19-point collapse against the Texans. All these faults are still there. It's just that the wins and losses have been different. Like, they've won all these games, and they just lost the one against the Texans, and so everybody can just see the 9-4 record, and you're like, hooray. So to your point, I do think that the Achilles heel would be something like they're just not up. They're not getting off to a fast start. They're making mental errors. They're letting teams hang around. It's happened a lot this season. It's not like they've blown out every single opponent. Even against the Panthers in week one, I felt like they should have won by way more than, 16. It just felt like that type of game. Didn't feel like the Panthers were good at all. And so I do think that, moving forward against the Jets, then you play the Broncos in Denver,
Mhm.
and then obviously the Colts and the Titans again. It's I'm not. I do think that they will win against the Jets. I do think they're going to beat the Colts again, and I do think they could beat the Titans. Obviously, that Broncos game is going to be huge, but to your point, I do think that the reason for any like the worst fault of this team is just the inconsistencies week in and week out. They're not necessarily the same exact team. You already mentioned it. The last two games, the running game has been atrocious, and well, I'll say against Indy, I thought it was better than the final kind of line. I felt like it did tail off at the end, obviously, but during the game, like Travis Etienne had some explosive plays that really helped them out. But again, that was their number one thing, and then all of a sudden they're playing terribly, and so
Yeah.
it's a weird situation. I actually wrote like a huge feature on the Jaguars running back room. Chad Morton, I talked to him. I talked to a few other guys. I asked questions for like weeks ahead, just trying to get this done,
Mhm.
and I put it out there, and then they lay an egg in the run game against against the Cardinals, and then or no. Against the Titans, yeah, where they had 70 yards. So it's
Ah,
just,
yeah.
it's just one of those things where you don't know. But that's the issue with the Jaguars. You just don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because like it's there's not an obvious one. It's not like, oh man,
Right.
like their defensive tackle room is like awful. So like teams are going to
Sure.
be able to just like run against them in the playoffs and like in the offseason everyone's going to be saying like, oh, draft a defensive tackle in the first round or the second round, I guess, since the Jags don't have a first rounder. It's
Hmm.
it's not obvious. They don't have like a clear glaring weakness, I think. And so like the one that I came up with is pretty similar to yours in terms of consistency versus inconsistency. I think it's just like how the turnover battle falls because like
Mm-hmm.
Lawrence has been incredible recently in terms of like avoiding turnovers and not making like the boneheaded mistakes that we're all used to him seeing. But it wouldn't be
Hmm.
shocking if we saw him kind of revert to that for just a single game. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the Jaguars, I believe, are second in the league right now in takeaways behind only the Bears.
Hmm.
So like it's definitely a defense that like has a lot of skilled players, like a lot of good coaching, like Devin Lloyd's interception against the Colts, I feel like was kind of just Devin Lloyd making a good play and having like the range to like reach out and extend for the ball and read Daniel Jones's
Hmm.
eyes. But then like Devin Jones interception against the Chiefs back on Monday Night Football in week three was kind of like a schemed up interception because like
Yeah.
obviously great job by Devin to like make the play and then finish the play. But like he dropped out of a mugged up look and like the Campanile basically fooled Mahomes and Andy Reid.
Hmm.
And so like both of those things are like the players and the coaches are like deserve the turnovers that they have generated. And I don't want to say that
Hmm.
the defense is relying on turnovers, but I could see a world where like the Jags like just get knocked out of the playoffs because Trevor Lawrence has like one awful interception and the defense just doesn't have any. And then like that's kind of been the recipe for a lot of wins this season, I feel like, is like either Trevor not throwing the ball a lot or the
Hmm.
defense generating a lot of turnovers. And so I feel like they really need to either win the turnover margin or at least have it be kind of neutral in order to really make a push.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, they've been on a tear, obviously, with the turnovers this season in general. And then obviously as of late, I think they've had 5 turnovers last 2 games. But they also had 3 games where they've had no turnovers. And they've had a few games where they've had one. So it is a situation where it does feel like the defense, in order for them to have a very successful day, they have to get turnovers. Otherwise, it might be something like the Cardinals game where it's just, basically back and forth and you're sort of sitting there wondering if they're going to win or not. And so to your point, I do think that you're right. That could be the big difference maker. I mean, again, I keep pointing to this Cardinals game. I think that it really does encapsulate the the season so far. I
Yeah.
mean, they have 4 turnovers, the Jaguars do, and they end up winning the game. And the I think the defense had either none or yeah they had no turnovers, and so it's a situation where it's like they can win that way somehow. I mean, who has 4 turnovers and still wins? That rarely happens though. That's
It's
not a
happened
thing.
2 times in the past 5 years, Demetrius, and both times it was quarterback. The teams were quarterbacks by Trevor Lawrence. So
Exactly. Only Trevor can do it,
yeah,
and yeah. So it's not realistic, and it is something that they have to basically rely on. They have to make sure, hey, if Trevor can have a perfect day in terms of not turning the ball over, then we're going to be good. If the defense can have a couple turnovers their way, then we're going to be good. But they cannot rely on, to your point, the 4 turnovers and somehow pulling it out against an awful Cardinals team.
yeah. Well, that was just me trying to like offer basically a contrarian segment because
Hmm.
since everyone else is going to be raving about how the Jags are marching to the Super Bowl, but like at the same
I already
time,
bought my
like
ticket.
if they're if they're quote unquote like Achilles heel or like biggest weaknesses are simply like
Yeah.
the turnover margins and like inconsistencies and stuff like that. Like that's
Hmm.
you can say a lot of similar things about like just other contending teams. And so obviously
Absolutely.
the Jaguars are in a very, very, very good spot. I have one last note before we get out of here. Go watch the last episode of The Hunt if you have not already. It is like I can't even come up with the words for it. I was blown away. It was like one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. And I'm not a big documentary guy, so I guess I haven't really seen a lot. But if you like the team just did an unbelievable job of giving an inside look to Josh Hines-Allen and not just like what this season has been as he chased the franchise career sack record, but like through his whole life, through his upbringing in Jersey and
Yeah.
Alabama, his time at Kentucky in college, his early years like learning under Calais Campbell. It's
Mhm.
an unbelievable 40 minutes. So would highly recommend. Shout out to the Jaguars' production team. They're pretty awesome. But yeah, I think that's a must-watch video, so I want to make sure people are aware of it. But Demetrius,
Mhm.
that was a lot of fun. Thanks so much for joining. Try to keep a good rotation of people going, but so we'll probably have you back either late in the playoffs, maybe, or early in the off season. We'll see.
Yeah.
Definitely have you back at some point, though. Thanks for joining, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. I'll always be happy to come on.
Sweet. All right, you can find Demetrius's work at the Florida Times Union. He's on X. He's on Blue Sky. Great follow on Blue Sky, by the way, because like I try to be pretty active on Blue Sky, and so do a lot of other people. But Demetrius especially does a great job. So make sure to check out his work. You can check out the rest of my stuff at duval22.com and on Duval22's YouTube page. I've been doing more YouTube stuff for you guys. Yeah. All right, let's get out of here. I think this is going to end in 3 seconds. So thanks to everyone for watching and listening.